Hello everybody, good evening, welcome to show number 399 of Sunday Night Live. I hope everybody is doing well and has had a glorious weekend. I've had a bit of a weird weekend. I've been definitely not feeling very well. I've been under the weather. I suspected I might have the new variant of COVID that's kind of kicking about. But no, apparently not. At least my tests are coming back negative, but I certainly feel like it. It's weird. I basically got up this morning, had my breakfast, potted about for a wee bit, and then just felt really kind of tired and breathless. And so I went back to bed and promptly went back to sleep and slept until about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock this evening. So I've been up since then. But yeah, I just feel very tired. And definitely the kind of short of breath thing is still kind of going on. But other than that, I'm all right. Yeah, it's been a busy time lately. It's been a busy couple of weeks. Yeah, there's been lots of things going on. Some of you guys are aware of the issues. I talked about them over the course of last week on the last couple of shows for Songwriting Simplified and Sunday Night Live. We talked about those. So yeah, it's been a busy time. And there was another little issue this afternoon that I started seeing a few people reporting it, and then I got with IT and they fixed it in less than an hour. So that issue is all fixed now. It did not last long. There was some weird thing going on with the license server. But the IT guys basically went and kicked the arse of the license server and everything's fine. But there was a period where people's My Personas accounts basically went blank. Kind of like maybe a couple of months ago. But you could launch Studio One, but it would ask you to activate again. But we gave the server a kick, and everything came back. It's fine. So I don't know what that was all about. IT don't know what that was all about either. To them, it's a mystery. But kicking the server did the job. And when I say kick, I don't mean literally physically kick. They basically just give it a jump start, and it's fine. I don't know that many people noticed, to be honest. I had maybe a dozen people notice. And I think a few people made some support tickets, but it's all sorted now. And it's a totally separate and completely different brand new issue to what we were talking about last week. It's completely not related. But it's all fine now. Everything is working as it should be. I've tested this with 12 different accounts to be sure. And all of them, I can log in and all the products that are registered in those accounts are all there. And I can activate Studio One with every single one of the different accounts. No problem. So it's all fixed. So nothing to worry about. And everybody that was affected by the issue has reported back to me and said that it's fixed for them too. So no idea. No idea. But everything is fine. So nobody needs to panic because there is nothing going on. So with that said, Chris raises a curious little question here, and he's right actually. He says, I never realized it before today, but there is a 770 at the end of my name. I don't remember putting that there. You likely didn't. And so this is to do with YouTube channels showing names and not login IDs. There are settings that you can change. It's to do with your comments settings. Now I've started rolling this show, so I can't actually check to see if this works for myself, but you can go into your comment settings and you can check that it's showing the correct handle there. You can also go into youtube.com/handle and you can check that you are showing the correct handle rather than login ID. So you should be able to go in and change that. Mine still shows Jonny Lipsham Studios. It may be that the reason why mine's not affected is because mine is a brand account. Whereas the rest of you might not be brand accounts. That's why you're just showing usernames. So for example, Daryl Harrison is Daryl Harrison 9131, for example. And I know that Billy Morgan is Tor MGT. And it didn't used to show that. It used to show his actual name. And so I know that that's what's going on here. It's all to do with your handles. Love handles or otherwise. So you need to go into your accounts and go and check your settings and be sure. I would say maybe have a play about with this after the show. Just in case, you know, it stops you from commenting in the chat on this show. So that's a good point. So Billy, as usual, is first in the door. Tony Stringer is also here. Daryl Harrison, as I said, is here. Chris Mrackner is here. Kyle is also here. And Dave from Bob's NY is also here. Just Bob is here as well, who is now known as Just Bob 9006, which I don't think is your age. I'm kidding. Stephen Wilson is also here. Let's see. Don Oliver is here. And my dear friend at Paparaptor Music. That's what it used to say. It used to say Paparaptor Music, but it now just says Paparaptor. I don't know. What's going on, Lloyd? Sorry, mate. Ron Figura is here, who used to be known as the Keyman, but it now says Ronald Figura 1465. So I think this is all to do with your IDs and your handles. That's what I think this is. Jeffrey is also here, and I think I've reached the bottom of the chat here. It's close to my age, though, says Bob. Yes. Well, I don't know. I think you look younger than that. All right. So let's go see what other questions we have. We have a couple of questions already, which is nice. Thank you, guys. Kyle says, everyone make sure to give JL the finger thumb. Hit the darn like button. Yes, hit that like button, please. We've got 17 people here. And we've only got 9 likes. It'd be nice if we could get more than that. That'd be nice. So if you like what I do here on this show, and you like what I do here just in general, smack the like button. Hit it. Hit it again. Hit it again. Hit it again. Actually, I think you can only hit it once. Because if you hit it again, it unlikes it. So yeah, it doesn't like multi-like it, unfortunately. However, at the bottom of the chat, there is the little heart thing, and you can select your favorite little emoji from there, and you can smack that away and have fun with that if you want. I will demonstrate by setting that to the heart thing and smack that a few times. But yeah, you can hit that for as many times as you want as well, just for entertainment value. Whatever your particular favorite emoji is of the moment, feel free to use that during the course of the show. I don't know that it does anything to the show or to my channel. I don't know, but I assume it must do something. But anyway. Let's see. Chris says, import a song file into a project. So, I'm going to stop you right there. We already could be talking at cross purposes here. So, you said song file into a project. When you say that, that makes me think immediately of the project page, which is for mastering. And there is no tempo in mastering, okay? So, are you trying to import a file of any kind, a guitar track, a trumpet track, a bass track, whatever track it is, into a song, or are you wanting to bring a file, a song, into the project page? Because in the project page, which is for mastering, there is no tempo to think about. Okay, tempo is irrelevant there. Because it doesn't, the tempo of one song in your project doesn't affect all the other ones that are in the project. You may have 15 or 16 songs, all with 15 or 16 different tempos. One is not going to affect the other. But reading the rest of this, you say, change the tempo of just that imported file without directly affecting the whole song. Now, ideally, you want everything to be playing at the same tempo in a song. So you want all the tracks to be playing at the same tempo. So I'm assuming from what you've said here that the issue is you have a file that was not recorded at the same tempo, but you want to use it at the song's tempo. So there is this great thing in Studio One, which has been around since, I think, version 2, but it has been kind of repeatedly updated over the years as well and improved. And that is time stretch. Time stretch is very, very cool. And you can do this on a per track basis to make sure that everything that you bring in is going to be in time with your project. There is a way that you can set this up so that Studio One basically does this if it knows the tempo of the file that you bring in. If that file has tempo data, it will automatically either stretch it to make it longer and therefore slower, or it will compress it to make it shorter and therefore faster so that it fits your song's tempo. Okay? And you can do this in the song setup dialog. I'll show you how to do this. So let's get Studio One open and we'll go over to the screen here. And to do that, you go into song and you go into song setup and it's in general here. This box here says stretch audio files to tempo. All right. So when you have this checked, what that does is that either stretches or compresses the file to fit the tempo of your song. So in this case, this is 98 BPM. If I bring in something that's 120 beats a minute, but it sounds good, and I think it will fit the vibe of this song, when I drag it in, Studio One will automatically, it will make it fit. And I don't have to think about it. So you can do this. You can also have this thing checked here, include effects when updating mastering file. I always have that checked as well. All right, so that's one thing you can do. The next thing you can do, if I close the mixer, let's imagine I have brought in this bass part from outside, which I didn't. This is an instrument that is transformed from presence to an audio track. But let's say it wasn't, or let's use this piano as an example. This is actually me playing my Nord. But let's say that it wasn't. Let's say I got this from a sample library or a loop library or something like that, and I just drag it in. What I can do is I can select this track here, and I can open the inspector, and I can set the time stretch here. So I have this set, and I've set it to drums. Most of the time I have it set to drums because drums is very good at detecting really clear transient data. Piano is still a percussive sound, still a percussive instrument, so it works just great for that. And then, next thing to do is to grab this section and drag it up. And in this section here, you'll see file tempo. If it says something like not set, then you can hit this little drop down here and you can enter a value. Most of the time these days, Studio One doesn't do this anymore. It certainly used to in previous versions, but in Studio One 7, what it does now is when you bring in a file, it will try and detect the tempo based on the transients that it picks up. Now, if it's a vocal, it's not going to find a whole lot of transients because the human voice doesn't produce many transients, not obvious ones anyway. I mean, every sound has a transient, right? But the human voice isn't really that percussive, so you're not going to have really clear spikes for a transient, right? So, with that in mind, if it's something like a vocal, it will, instead of having the tempo data here, unless tempo data is written to the file, in which case you're fine. If tempo data is written to the file, it will have this number in white and it'll be fine. But if there is no tempo data, then Studio One is going to try and figure out what that tempo is based on the transient data in the file. And then it will give you a number in red. And if that value is the same as this value down here, then you can hit this little drop down here and it will say, it doesn't say that here because this tempo is correct, but it will give you the option to double, half, or it will give you the option to approve the tempo. You're saying to Studio One, well done, Studio One, you guessed this correctly. And then the number will turn white and everything will be fine. However, if it's not brought in and it doesn't detect any tempo, or it doesn't know what it is, and it says not set, or it has the wrong value in here, you can try and figure out, you're going to have to basically manually figure out what the tempo of the file is. Now, like I said, with a vocal track, that's going to be hard to do. It's not impossible, but it will be hard to do. That being the case, you can enter a value in here until everything lines up. You may have to experiment a bit and do a couple of different values until everything lines up. When it's all done, then you are good to go. Hit save, and that will be remembered going forward for this song. So, for the most part, I recommend you always bring in audio files that have tempo data written to them. So if you're bringing stuff in from a sample library or from a loop library, check that there is tempo data written to the file. If there isn't, check the file header. Check the file header, because the file header may well actually have the tempo value written in there. And if it does, you can type that value in here and Studio One will do the rest. All right, so basically what I'm saying is there is always a solution to an audio file that has no tempo data, or if it has tempo data, you can make Studio One read it and stretch or compress to make it fit until it does fit. The other caveat to bear in mind here is if your song is 98 BPM, like this one is, and you bring something in that is either much slower than that, like 60 BPM, or much faster, like 160 BPM, bear in mind, the more you have to stretch something, or the more you have to compress something to make it fit the tempo, the more audio artifacting you will get on that audio event. And there is nothing you can do about it, because basically, if you start stretching the audio, there is, like a rubber band, there is only so much stretchiness you can do to it before it starts to look weird. And in the same way with audio, there is only so far you can do before it starts to sound weird, because you're basically making all the peaks and all the troughs of the waveform elongated. And in order to do that, Studio One basically has to fill in gaps digitally. So you will start to hear those gaps where Studio One has tried to stretch out that piece of audio data to make it sound right, to make it rhythmically right. So when that happens, you will start to hear artifacting. Now, what you might find is that in the context of your mix, that doesn't matter, that nobody really can hear it, because it might be a little bit kind of buried And you might go, you know what, that's okay. It doesn't matter if there's a little bit of artifacting because nobody's hearing it in the context of the whole mix. But if everybody's hearing it, then you may actually have to just swap that out for something else that's a little bit closer in tempo to your song and sounds just as good. So as a general rule, anything that is greater or less than your tempo by 20 beats a minute is going to start to have some artifacting. Okay, so plus minus 20 BPM, and you'll start to hear some artifacting. Nothing you can do about that. That's just how audio works in the digital domain. Okay, it's the same with tape. If you stretch tape, you get more warbling, right? And you can experiment with that in your own time using a cassette player. If you still got a cassette player, here's a fun little experiment to do. Put your finger on the spindle whilst it's in playback mode, and that will slow down the tape passing through the playhead. And when that happens, you can slow down the audio and you'll start to hear it warble. Right? So the same thing happens here in the digital domain, except it just sounds a lot more ugly in digital because everything's squared off in digital. Whereas on tape, warbling is actually, it kind of sounds actually okay. In some cases, it can sound very cool, very effective. Very effective, I should say. So let me close those up and we'll go back over to the lounge. So I hope that that has helped answer that question. That is a really great question, Chris, actually. So it can be done. You can bring anything in from an outside source. But if it knows the tempo, if there's tempo data written to that file, you're not going to have an issue. If there is no tempo data, then you're going to have to work that out. But it's totally possible, and it won't affect anything else. Because individual audio files don't affect everything else. It's not going to upset the apple cart. It just won't be in time to everything else until you've got the correct tempo data in there. Let me see what else there is here. Okay, Ron says, I can't successfully upload short audio clips created in workspaces on the Android mobile app. The app allows upload to a workspace, the app crashes, and I reinstalled the app. Okay, if that is still crashing for you, please make a support ticket. And I will get that over to the people that deal with the apps, which will be Dave Coffin. Dave Coffin is the apps guy. He's the guy that built the My Presonus app, by the way. He also built pretty much everything that is Studio One Pro Plus. So he's the go-to guy for that kind of stuff. So please make a support ticket about that. I'm not going to be able to do anything at this side, unfortunately. Add a new track with a WAV file. Yep, I can do that very easily. I can add any new track and I can basically drag in loop files from anywhere and they will always be stretched if there is tempo data because of the way I've got it set up. I've had it that way for years. Dave says, I notice your audio on this cast is a bit telephony. I don't know what the heck you're talking about. Can anyone else confirm what Dave is talking about there? I have no idea what the fudge you're talking about. Kyle says, YouTube now displays your handle instead of your display name. This was done to help prevent hacking. That is correct. Yeah. Just before I started the show, I actually had to look that up myself because I was like, I'm not sure about that. Oh, here we go. Just Bob has done a little bit of research for me, which is great. Excuse me snorting here. He says, yes, heart and other emojis can help YouTube channels by increasing click-through rates. Ah, there you go. Making videos stand out, improving viewer engagement. Hurrah! I like that. Thank you for finding that out. Yeah, so spam that emoji button, please, everybody, to your heart's content. Because apparently it is helpful. I didn't know that. Thank you. I had no idea. Okay, Lloyd says, is there a way to manually adjust a freeform track to match a previously mapped track? Yes, there is. Yeah, Carl says, all good to me. Yeah, audio is good. Yeah, yeah. So it looks like the only person that's experiencing audio issues with this is Dave. So Dave probably needs to either upgrade his internet, or he just needs to log out the stream and come back in. So either of those should do it. Hello, Keith. Good to see you. Keith has just walked in the door. Lowen says it sounds good for him as well. Ron says you have to keep the string between the soap cans tight. That's hilarious. All right, to Lloyd's question, I'm going to have to create a new song to do this. So let's do that. Let's go. Oh, crap. I just did something I didn't want to do because I'm an idiot. Really, guys, I am an absolute fudge packet. Okay. By the way, that's a Scots term for being an idiot. All right, so new song. Let's go to the screen again. New song, new song, new song, new song. All right, so let's go grab something that I knew has tempo data in it. Marb. Let's go find something from here that just sounds good. There we go. All right, so let's just duplicate that a few times and then loop this guy a few times as well. So we have our drums in here, and I'm changing the color so it's less garish. All right, so I like the sound of that. Now, I can go and see if I have other things that I could put with this. Let me close that. Don't need that. Go over to here. I'm gonna actually grab something from this brushes folder that is not at the same tempo as this. But like I said, I already have this set up. Find something else. Maybe we put these two drum loops together, right? Now, bear in mind, I already have, as I said, in my song setup dialog here. Oop, that's not what I wanted to go to. I wanted to go to general. I've already got this set up here. So stretch audio files to tempo. So anything I bring in now is always going to be correct if it has tempo data written to it. So in this case, I know that the tempo is 86, but let's see what it says when I bring it in. So let's go and have a look. And notice how this value is in red. See, it calculated that the tempo was 86 BPM. And I can see here that that tempo is correct. So I can now drop down, approve tempo. Done. So now that is the correct tempo. So if you have something that doesn't have any tempo data in it, then you can stretch the file. Okay. And so if I was to hold down, I think, Alt on here, which I think is Option, Alt, Option. I think that's right. Option on a PC. You can then hold down Option with the mouse hovering at the end of the event, and then you can stretch or compress the event. So you can stretch it in either direction to fit your tempo, and then you can just watch and make sure the transients line up with the grid, and then you'd be good to go. All right, so I've approved this, so this is now correct. So if I just duplicate that, now we can play both of these together. All right, so I know that these are all correct now. Fortunately, Loop Loft, the sadly long lamented Loop Loft, they got sold to Native Instruments, and Native Instruments basically liquidated the whole darn thing. So all those loops from Loop Loft, if you had them, are gone. There is no way to get them back. There's no way to recover your Loop Loft account either. Basically, they liquidated the whole darn thing. However, the guy that founded Loop Loft is a guy called Ryan Gus. He is a terrific bloke. Really, really great guy. He started up something new called Yurt Rock, which is pretty much exactly the same as what Loop Loft used to be, except it's just him running it on his own now. And he has some even better artists than he had making loop packages than he had when it was Loop Loft. And so if you have been a Loop Loft customer like I have been for many years, go over to Yurt Rock and you can get all the same stuff pretty much, and more besides. This is not a commercial for Yurt Rock, but I highly recommend it. There's loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of awesome loops that you can get. And in fact, there is one package you can get that gives you everything. And the last I checked, it was on sale, and you could get it for like a couple of $100, and it's probably worth about $1,200. And in actual fact, that's when I got the platinum bundle of Loop Loft, was when they were on for sale for like $100 instead of $1,500. So you can go over to Yurt Rock and you can basically get literally everything for a couple of $100. I don't know if that sale is still on, but it's well worth to go over to yurtrock.com and check to be sure. But coming back to this, coming back to Lloyd's question, I have to go find Lloyd's question again because I have lost it. Where is your question? I'm trying to find Lloyd's question. Hello, Paul Morgan. Good to see you, mate. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. I am not finding Lloyd's question anymore. And I know he wrote it, so it is here. Ah, found it. Is there a way to manually adjust a freeform track to match a previously mapped track? All right, so if you have a freeform track, it's a little bit different. But as I said, you can, with the mouse hovering over the end here, you can hold the Alt and then you can drag. And you can try and make the transients match up that way. All right? Now, the problem you're going to have with that is if it's freeform, it's just going to be all over the place tempo-wise. So in that particular case, sorry, I've reread your question and I think I actually understand it better. So the answer I've just given you, completely ignore because it's all bullshit. It's not related to your question at all. I actually answered a question you never asked. Sorry about that. So if you want your song to match a freeform, or you want your freeform track to match everything else, and so everything is in tempo together, you're going to have to do some tempo mapping. So how do we do that? It's a little bit tricky to do. There are a couple of ways to do it. And there are some videos out there by way you can do this. Marcus Huskins made one a while back that is really, really good. And it's still applicable to this day. So I would go search up tempo mapping in his YouTube channel because it's a really, really good video. But the way you do it is you have to tempo map. So you can bring in your file and you can drag it up into the tempo track. I open the tempo track. You can drag that up here, or you can open Melodyne with that freeform thing and generate a tempo map out of that freeform thing, and then drag and drop that onto the tempo track, and it should do the tempo mapping for you because you're basically using the tempo map created by Melodyne. The only caveat, like I've said before, is if your freeform track doesn't have a lot of transient data, it's going to be difficult, because in order for any software to figure out the tempo of a piece of audio, is it uses transient data. There's a transient here. There's a transient here. Okay, what is the amount of time between transient A and transient B? Okay, how often does that happen throughout this piece of music? Okay, this seems to happen quite a lot. That one transient and the next transient seems to be more or less that space apart. That is how tempo mapping works. This is how DAWs and things like Melodyne calculate your tempo data. Is they take an average of the time between transient A and transient B, and then they look for patterns throughout your audio to see whether this is a regularly occurring kind of space. And if it is, then it will say, this is your average tempo. And it will create like a basic tempo map from that. And then you can go and finesse the tempo map in the tempo track. And you can move some of the tempo nodes about until it sounds like it should. Okay? But if you've got like just one event that is played not to a click, but is kind of roughly in the ballpark of a tempo, then you can just use the alt and drag until it kind of all lines up and is in time. Okay? The shorter the event, the better. But if it's like a 4-minute song, good luck, is all I'll say to you. And that's where you'll need to follow the method that that Marcus laid out in his video. And actually what he suggested was putting a marker for tempo, for putting a little tempo dot in the tempo map on every downbeat, so on every beat one. And then you can stretch, you can chop up the event into 1 or 2 bar chunks, and then you can use that stretching thing to manually stretch or compress until each 2 bars are in time. And it's going to take a long time to do, especially with a 4 or 5 minute song, but it can be done and you can get good results out of it. And I can't believe I still just called bullshit on myself on my own show. So would you suggest that I map the freeform as a separate song and then add it into tracks which are already mapped or at a fixed tempo? Yeah, so use that process that I just outlined, where you basically chop it up into chunks and then kind of time align those couple of chunks and move along. And then you can use Melodyne to basically, Melodyne has this feature inside of it where you can create a tempo map. If you're not sure how to do that in Melodyne, there are videos on that subject. that you should be able to find on Celemoni's YouTube channel. Or you could just Google tempo mapping in Melodyne and follow what is done in those videos, and then bring that tempo map into the tempo track, and then set everything to follow the tempo track. All right. So how do I make everything follow the tempo track? Let's move this down. You see this guy here where it says tempo time stretch. You can keep this at time stretch, or you can set it to follow. And when you set it to follow, everything will follow whatever is going on in the tempo track. So if I were to put in a tempo change here, for example, that made everything go crazy for a couple of bars. Okay, so if everything is set to time stretch that is in your song, so all tracks need to be set to this, either time stretch or follow, then you can have it follow whatever is going on in the tempo map. So if your freeform track that you've tempo mapped, brought that tempo map into here, then everything that is set to follow the tempo track will follow it, and then everything will be in time, including the metronome, right? So the metronome will follow the tempo map. And then when you're recording, you'll be following the metronome, which will be following the tempo track. The tempo track will govern literally everything when all tracks are set to either time stretch or follow. Okay, yeah. So that's what I would suggest you do. Let me go back over to the lounge. Back over here, and we've got a link to Yurt Rock from Billy. Thank you for that, Billy. Elliot is here. Elliot says, I know Yurt Rock. Yeah, Yurt Rock is really, really good. So much good stuff over there. And like I said, I know Ryan, and he's great. The Walrus is here. By the way, everybody, you will notice that we've talked about YouTube and their IDs and stuff like that. So if you're noticing that your name in the chat is different to what you expect, you can go change that. Just go up in the chat and reference what Kyle said to do, because Kyle's actually got the right information there. Dave, that's very funny. There was a smidgen of mozzarella cheese on the right hand of the laptop. You funny, funny guy. Okay, Elliot says, is there a way to play and record the audition into the timeline? They have happy offbeats when auditioned instead of when dragged into the timeline, especially odd bar loops. Are you talking about loops? I'm assuming you're talking about loops, right? No, you cannot record the audition into the timeline, because the audition is just playing the audio event, playing the audio track as it is in the browser. When you drag it in, as you saw with my song here, in that last demonstration that I did with this little brushes loop, I basically just dragged it in, and it plays exactly the same. So if I just solo this, it's exactly the same. Exactly the same. So all this does is just play the raw file, right? But you'll notice this little guy here, and when you have this on, it plays at the song tempo. So if I turn that off, much slower because it's 86 BPM. Okay, so basically all this does is just play the audio file. So let's say, for example, let's close the mixer and we'll unsolo this for a minute, but we'll mute both of those. And let's say I just drag this in, right? And then I just play this. Okay, so it's exactly the same thing here. This is the same file as this. They're all exactly identical. So I don't know why in the browser for you it sounds different than it does when you drag it in. I've heard people report that before, like many, many, many years ago. I think the last time I heard somebody report that would be 2017, maybe. Studio One 3.5 would have been the last time I heard that. Never heard it since, never had an issue with it since. I've got a lot of loop libraries, I've got a lot of samples, I've got splice as well, I can bring in anything. And whether they're in the Audition or whether in the browser or whether they are brought into a song, they sound identical. There's literally no way that they cannot sound identical, as far as I can tell. But yeah, make sure this guy is checked as well. If you want to see how it's going to how the loop file is going to sound at tempo, make sure you got that metronome thing set, and then it will audition at tempo. What you might find is it may play louder than it does when it's in the song, and that's maybe because this guy is at a different volume level. This might be all the way up here or all the way down here. So you can adjust the volume to match the volume of your song if you want to. All right, so I hope that helps kind of answer that question. Tis a good question. Let's see. Kyle says if you use the virtual input in Universal Control, you can record the loop play into Studio One. Yes, you can if you've got loopback, yes. But only if you've got loopback. Then it will work. You basically just create a track with the input for the virtual input. And away you go. That's how I can record, like, if I'm doing a podcast with somebody, which I do a regular podcast, and I record it. And we do it on Teams. So I have the input from Teams going straight into a track in Studio One, and that's his input. And then I have mine on a separate track, and that's how we record our podcast. And he is in Australia, so that's why we have to do it on Teams. And it works beautifully. No problem at all. And then I just do a little bit of mixing, and a little bit of balancing, and it's great. And then I export it and I put it up on his podcast, and that's it done. So yeah, that's how I work when I'm doing podcasting or something like that. So yeah, if you've got virtual input, you can record the audition directly into Studio One because it has to go through your interface to make itself heard. Lowen says, I don't know, I haven't been back in the room. Remember when I came in and went and sat down in the living room, then came in the kitchen, then left with you. Okay, I have no idea what you're talking about. I should probably read things in context. All right, Trevor Morris says, if you have a few seconds, could you, we have 4 minutes, could you confirm which remote control apps currently exist for the iPhone? There is, I believe there is a remote control for the Studio Live mixers that you can have on the iPhone. There is also I don't know if this is still a thing. It certainly used to be a thing. It was like a little mix app where you could do your own little headphone mix, and you could sort it out on your iPhone. I don't know whether that's still a thing or not. It certainly used to be, and it used to work over UCNet. The Studio One Remote is an iPad app and Android app, but I don't believe it is available in the iPhone App Store. It is in the iPad App Store, but it is not in the iPhone App Store. So I suspect because it doesn't work on an iPhone, and that's why it's not there. But yes, if you have an Android device, QMix, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you. QMix. Yes, I'm starting to lose my brain. Thank you, Dwayne. So yeah, QMix UC. QMix UC was a fantastic little app. I loved that thing. I don't know if it's still a thing or not though. But yeah, Studio One Remote is on Android phone. I have an Android phone. I can control, I can control Studio One from this. I can also control my mixer from this as well. And from iPad as well. So it works on iPad as well. If you have loopback, not sure what that means. How would you have it, or would you want it? Well, if I did not have loopback, this show would not be possible. This show is only possible because I have loopback. Otherwise, you would not be able to hear anything coming out of Studio One. So the fact that you could hear this is because I have loopback. What is loopback? Loopback basically is a virtual input, and it basically takes it makes a copy of the main output from my interface and virtually runs that into a set of virtual inputs in the mixer controller for my interface. My interface is the Quantum HD8, which has 2 loopbacks actually. So I use one for social media like Discord and stuff like that, and then Skype, or what used to be Skype, Teams, and other stuff like Zoom calls. And then I have another loopback set up, which is for this show. And basically, what that does is that just has my piano and my mic and the audio coming out of Studio One set to different balances so that they are all nicely balanced. And then that goes into a virtual input in the interface, which then goes out into OBS. And then you guys get to hear it. So that's what loopback is. Loopback enables audio from the outside, from like YouTube or wherever, to be able to come in through your interface and that kind of thing. So there is a caveat to this. So if you are recording audio from an outside source, for example, like I said, YouTube, first of all, biggest caveat is copyright. Don't do it. But if you are going to do it, then when you create a stereo channel in Studio One, it will appear as an input option. Big caveat coming up. Do not engage the monitor button on that stereo channel when you arm it to record, when you select that channel and you have your virtual input as the input. That will create a feedback loop. don't do that, right? You could blow your speakers as much as anything else, your hearing as well. So don't do that. So when you have that as a stereo channel, only record arm it. Don't have the monitor button engaged. And this is why in the Studio One, in the wrench on the arranger, on the arrangement view, if you click on the wrench, you'll see that there's an option there that says something like monitor follows selection. Uncheck that option. And what this does is that means that when it's unchecked, when you select a channel, it will not make the monitor button automatically go on. So this means that if I am recording, for example, my friend when I'm doing the podcast, I don't monitor his channel because his channel's coming in from Teams, and if I monitor that, that's going to create a feedback loop. So I don't do that. So that enables me to do that podcast. So I get his audio coming straight in from Teams direct into Studio One. And it works beautifully. And that's the only reason. So basically, doing that podcast and doing this show can only be done with loopback. Or the other way you can do it is if you have two interfaces. One which is your main interface, and then a secondary interface that you route. Well, you grab a pair of physical cables and you take the main output of your main interface with these cables and you plug it into the inputs of this second interface. And then you have that as a stereo input, right? So that will work. And then you just need to use a pair of headphones to monitor. That will work. I used to do my show with two interfaces like that, and it worked for me for years until I got the 1824C, which had loopback. And then I didn't need a two interface setup anymore. So I do everything with one interface. And then, of course, I have the Quantum HD8, which has two sets of loopbacks. So I'm blessed, basically. The Studio Live AR16C, I don't know whether that has loopback or not. Yeah, if you see Virtual 1 and Virtual 2, or maybe you just see Virtual 1 in the audio output matrix in your audio I/O setup, then yes, you do have it. If you don't, then you won't. So the way to be sure that you've got this set up, let me show you very, very quickly. So if I go back to the screen here and we go Studio One, in fact, no, let's do the quick way. So I click on this button here, and this opens my inputs. If I click on my outputs here, you can see I've got all of those outputs there. I've got all of those 8 outputs. If I click on inputs here, you'll see here I've got this one called loopback. And you'll notice that this is selected to loopback left, loopback 1 left, and loopback 1 right. And you'll see that there's a second one there. There's loopback 2 there. Okay. So I have the one loopback set up here. And so what that means is this is now set as an audio input, which means I can create a stereo track and I can record directly into Studio One using that track. But you'll notice that if I open show inputs here, you'll see that I've got this loopback set here. Okay, and you can see that that was peaking there, and that is the input for loopback. And this tells me that the level going out to OBS is correct or not. And I can put inserts on this, so I can put a limiter on this if I want to make sure that it's not going out too loud into OBS. But it really doesn't matter too terribly much. I used to have inputs I used to have inserts on here for like my voice, for example. I would put a limiter on here. I don't tend to do that anymore, but it doesn't really tend to matter. But you know, you can do. You can go grab a template, or you can go and grab your favorite limiter, and you can put it on there. And then that way you are controlling the input as it comes into Studio One. So you can do EQ and compression on the way in. Very, very handy. Kyle says, if you have a Mac, then loopback is not supported. That is correct. Loopback is not supported in Universal Control on a Mac. The reason being is that Mac has its own way of doing this, because Macs have something called aggregate devices. You cannot aggregate a device in on PC. So the reason why loopback exists at all is because of the way Windows handles audio. It has its own weird, unique way of doing things, which means that if you have two different audio applications open at the same time, like YouTube, and like YouTube and podcasting and things like that, then loopback is really, really useful, and that's what you would use it for. Okay? But if you don't have loopback, or you don't have a loopback supported interface, then doing something like what I'm doing right now is not going to be really possible, because nobody on your live stream will ever hear the audio coming from Studio One. They just won't. Because it's impossible on Windows, which is why loopback exists, because you basically have to take the output and bring it back through your interface as an input in order for it to work. In order for it to work in Windows. So basically you're cheating the Windows audio system. And Windows, you know, Microsoft are well aware of this. They are very, very well aware of this. Will they actually develop their audio system in Windows? Highly unlikely, because they've only been asked to do this since at least 2007, and no, they're not doing it. So it's highly unlikely they will do it, and so it's probably not ever going to happen, in which case, you know, loopback supporting devices will just be a thing forever. And that's not a bad thing, in my opinion. Dave says, what is the advantage of loopback to use only for output to blogs and things? Yep, it does that, but it also does this live show. Without this live show, without loopback, this show would not be possible. And we're coming up on 400. So, speaking of coming up on 400, there are two things happening next Sunday that you need to be aware of. Number one, it is the closing date for the Halloween Songwriting Challenge. So by the end of next Sunday's show, you must submit your final submission to the submission folder in the workspace for the Halloween Songwriting Challenge, if you are taking part. Okay? If you submit after that, your submission will not count. Okay? It will be disqualified. It won't count. All right? So that's point number one. Point number two. It is also the 400th episode of Sunday Night Live next Sunday. So we will be having a party to celebrate that right here on next Sunday's show. So this Wednesday coming, we will do a final kind of pep talk for the Halloween Songwriting Challenge. We'll talk about that a little bit more, and we'll talk about things like the last couple of things to do with the modes and things that and scales and things that we've suggested for you to use. You don't have to use them, but you will get extra bonus points if you do. So please make use of those, at least in one section of your song. All right, you don't have to use them all through your whole song, but one section is sufficient. Mixmaster said, so if I'm invited into a YouTube live stream using StreamYard and want to share my audio/video clip in Studio One, so I can do it using loopback. Yeah, you kind of can do that. Yeah. And then they will be able to hear your audio. Anyway, that is the end of the show, guys and gals. So thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate it a lot. You guys are the best. I am frantically trying to close Windows here. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. I appreciate you guys a lot. We had a little bit low attendance by our standards. We peaked at 25, but we've only got 17 likes. So whilst the end credits are rolling, so to speak, please do smash the shit out of the like button. I would appreciate it. And I'll see you guys all on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified, the pre-Halloween special. And then the Wednesday after, so Wednesday next week will be the unveiling of the winner. So it will be a Halloween show. All right. I will be doing scary things. I'll have some kind of scary mask that I might wear for at least some of it. And Rich will be here as well. All right, folks. See you then. Good night.
Thank you.